And welcome back. As promised, we're going to hear the backstory behind the video we showed you just before the break. Lyle Foster, local business owner, assistant professor of sociology at MSU, one of the most community-minded people that I know. Welcome to Ozarks Live. Lyle, how are you?
I'm feeling great. Thank you for asking.
Good. It's great to see you. All right, tell us about this video. How did this come about?
Well, of course, of everything that's been going on in our nation between our two pandemics, and I do refer to the movement for social justice and racial reform as a pandemic in and of itself. There had been some focus on really a song that was a part of my childhood and throughout my life, Lift Every Voice and Sing, frequently referred to as the Black National Anthem. And I can't even explain it, but over a couple-day period, I thought about maybe just, I used the word updating it, and maybe mentioning some of the names of people who had been killed, who had been victims of the unrest that's taking place in our society. And so sometimes you just have these notions or ideas and you say, let's give it a try. So I contacted a videographer and I contacted a musician. I said, well, this is the idea I have, but let's see what happens.
So what has been, it's a very, very powerful video. And when you really get to the point where you say the names, you know, it hits home. What's been the response to this video, Lyle?
Well, it's actually been somewhat surprising. I have encountered a lot of people that I wasn't quite sure how they may react to, particularly, you know, saying the names and showing some scenes from some of the demonstrations and protests this summer. And at least everybody who's spoken to me has talked about how powerful it was, how much it meant. You may or may not know that one of the names I say is actually the name of my best friend who was actually killed in a hate crime 20 years ago. So that was very personal for me. And there's something that's kind of emotional, that's kind of very riveting for me about, you know, stating the names of the victims, because in a lot of ways, it not only memorializes them, but it also keeps their memories alive and lets us know and reminds us as a society that we have a lot of work to do.
We do still, frankly, have a lot of work to do. And when you hear the story about, you know, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, it's just mind-boggling to me. But one thing that struck me in this video is the convergence of the song and the history of the square. And at one point, you reach over and you touch that column where the sign is that talks about the lynchings on the square. What is that like for you?
Well, I say their names as well because I wanted to have a local connection to the names that I shared as well. And even though those names were over 100 years old, I think we all understand that it's very much a part of Springfield's history. I'm one of those individuals, you know, I moved here from another part of the nation. And when I learned the story and the background of the three victims of the Springfield lynching on the square, I was really overcome. And I tell people, and they look at me almost questioning, that there are still times when I drive around the square that I literally get a tightness in my gut thinking about what took place there. So for me, their memories are very much a part of my present. Mm-hmm. And there was a way that I wanted to honor them and think about the lives that could have been.
Well, and as someone who moved here from out of state, you were visiting here to watch your daughter's basketball game, right? And then
that's true.
Yeah, I remember we had this conversation years ago, and you see Commercial Street and you think, look at all the potential here. A coffee shop would be a great place for people to sit and come together and talk, and a little bit of fellowship and a lot of friendship and some great music and some great food. And it's just such a wonderful place. And we appreciate all you do for this community. But what are your thoughts on race relations here in the 417? I mean, we've come a long way, but we still have a ways to go.
Okay, you're trying to ask me some very tough questions today. I honestly believe that 417 and Springfield in particular, I do believe we have made progress and we are making progress. Certainly from my contacts and my experience in the community, I recognize that issues of equity, diversity, and inclusion are foremost on the minds of many people. I think part of the current challenge is how we move it from just the conversational stage to actually what I call the implementation and representation. So I think that's kind of the transition period. It's a very critical transition because it has to be done in a way that people don't come back 5 years and say, hey, we tried that and didn't work. So I think we need to make sure that when we have these conversations, when we have these implementation strategies, that it's a very inclusive process so that we have all the voices. Because what we don't need to do, what we don't want to do, is to have very homogeneous groups making decisions for the whole and then getting disappointed when it didn't go over so well. I think we're making some of those inroads and efforts, and I think those conversations are taking place. And so I'm encouraged by that. We've got more to do, but I believe we're not where we were. I think some of the marches and protests and what we saw over the summer several years ago, we could not have imagined that taking place in dear old Springfield. But in fact, it has.
It has, and it will continue to. It's all part of the journey. It's all part of the conversation. And I think we can all agree, let's keep this conversation going. And Lyle Foster, thank you for everything you do for 417, and I hope to see you in person soon, my friend.
It's been great talking to you this morning, and just shout out to our community. Let's keep moving forward. Thank you so much. Lift every voice.
Absolutely. Take care.